Hi everyone, and welcome for joining our Dynatrace office hours for DQL. My name is Sinisha, and I'm a developer advocate at Dynatrace. And together I have Peter Zara, product manager for DQL at Dynatrace. And in this session, we want to answer your questions you have about DQL and show you some new updates regarding DQL. So Peter, I'm handing over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sini. So also welcome to all the participants from my side, and thanks for making the time. And yeah, let's get right into the slides. So again, maybe if you already joined us last time, today we want to more or less follow a similar approach than last time. So I will start by sharing the latest news on the product side and also share the latest content that was added by the Dynatrace team regarding DQL. Then we will again take a look at a couple of selected questions that we prepared based on recent activity in our community and we consider valuable for all the attendees here to see. Then we will go again into the Q&A, answer your questions, and conclude with a summary and an outlook, right? So this time I'll be short on the content overview. Hopefully you have already either seen or consumed some of our YouTube videos. And here I'm just highlighting a couple of recent added videos by the team around Sini, where we address specific added features, specific commands, functions in DQL, as well as addressing specific use cases, right? Like, I don't know, comparisons of infrastructure, resource consumptions, or adding or recently added commands like the append command. What I also want to highlight is close to what I said last time. We have provided what we call Discover environment that is available for you to use it to try our capabilities. And what I want to mention here are lots of built-in dashboards on this environment, which you can use. Take a look at which use cases and capabilities can be achieved with DQL and our dashboarding apps, our notebook apps, and of course free to use. And some of those dashboards already contain quite advanced query use cases for establishing, in this case, business analytics dashboards, right? So just so you are aware of those provided dashboards. We are also currently working on a level up of our DQL documentation, meaning that we are restructuring our commands and functions documentation. We recently provided overview pages, which is searching for a specific command or functionality, getting a better overview as we are, of course, introducing more and more commands and functions down the road. And we are also making sure that the documentation examples that we present are also usable by you. So these examples that we are currently improving are, of course, available for you. You can copy paste those, try them on your environment or on the Discover environment, and basically get your hands on more in a copy paste style, as we are all known from other tutorials. So as we speak, so just this week we released the join command to DQL. So basically an extension to our existing join functionality in DQL. So if you are using DQL, you might have used or seen the lookup command. the lookup command is used or is intended to be used for cases where you do a lookup between the source table and the lookup table, for example, an error code to an error description, or a direct relationship, right? A host name to host relationship. And the join command now extends that functionality, first of all, by providing a syntax that is more, let's say, known to us and let's say users that are used to SQL, for example, where we are now capable of resolving many-to-many relationships, right? So in this case, I just provided a screenshot that relates a certain event, right, to the logs that are occurring for the same, let's say, filter condition, right? So I'm here having a BIS event and joining the related logs that occur based on the filter expression. And of course, we have a situation where many logs can occur within the same trace context, right? And those relationships are now also obliged to be solved with DQL as we speak this week. So I think it was deployed yesterday to production. So
just a quick interruption, what we maybe haven't mentioned. So if you have any kind of questions, you will see in Zoom there's a Q&A button or bubble, and if you just hover with your mouse over this Zoom window, the Q&A button or section will pop up, and feel free to ask there any kind of questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sini. So can only emphasize that as well. So selected questions. So again, we went through the community and chose a couple of use cases that are interesting to know and to be solved with DQL. So I will start with the first one, which is about basically achieving a query that returns the network load by process. And the key challenge here is that we want to return in the result set the host name and not the technical host ID, right? So I will simply jump to the notebook here. I prepared a query that shows how we can query two metrics with one DQL request, right? So here I have a traffic in and a traffic out by choosing the network traffic metric, which is available in Grail, and then splitting this series result by process group, right? And so if we run the query, we get one series per PGI or process group, but what we want is not the technical identifier, but rather the name of the process here, right? And by doing, or let's say using the process group information as a join key in this case, we can relate to the process group entity and here join on the process group on the left side of the lookup, right? So the metric is split by process group, and the host, or in this case, the process group, gives us an ID field, right? So here in the auto-completion, we always see the fields that are obliged to be used. Then we can here see the joined information from the lookup. And in this case, we have a lookup.entity field that gives us the process name. And what I'm just doing here in order to get rid of the technical identifier is use the fields remove command to only keep the process name. So if we choose the chart option again, we can see the process names here, right? So this should just illustrate how the lookup command can be used to establish a relationship between the technical entity identifiers we have in our metrics with the actual process information. Of course, we can choose any attribute from the processes by simply selecting those in the join subquery or in the lookup subquery, like I don't know, a tag field, for example, right? So if we chose that here, then if we switch to the table again, we should also see the tags here, right? But in this case, I only chose the name. Sini, I think you're muted.
One question, Peter. I see that you are showing incoming and outgoing traffic, but how if I would like to see just the total traffic, so incoming and outgoing traffic summarized, or the sum of it?
Yeah, good question. So what we'll do here is, so again, we have a traffic in series and a traffic out series. Now we want to combine them, right? So we can simply add another series, and we say here total traffic equals traffic in plus traffic out. And what I did here is I chose what we call an iterative expression modifier to tell DQL that you should actually not produce a scalar, but return again an array of values, so a series. If we choose the table option again, we have here now the total traffic. And again, let's use the fields remove at the end, because now we will also remove the traffic in and out, because then we can see the resulting total traffic, right? So again, by process name and the resulting sum of the incoming and outgoing traffic.
So this means with those iterative expressions, I can perform some mathematical operations as you do here, adding values, but also subtraction or division also works.
Exactly. So all mathematical operators that are working in DQL, like the plus, minus, divided, modulo, work on series data as well. And this goes even further, because what we can actually do is the following. I will simply try to achieve it here. Traffic over threshold. And I will now choose to wrap the total traffic that is produced by process, or let's say I will do it a bit differently here. So I will keep the total traffic, but then I will again fields add a typo here. Add, and then we have over threshold if total traffic greater or equals, then let's, I don't know, choose here 800,000, because I see some of those values, or let's choose 1 million. Then we produce a number of 1, otherwise 0, right? And again, by fields remove, we remove the total traffic, because we only want to see when the traffic hit a certain threshold. We want to have a new series generated based on that condition, right? So we can really operate on those data points that are generated on read with these expressions.
Yeah, those expressions look really, really powerful.
Yeah. So as said, it takes some time to get used to, but as said, we try to make all the commands and functions work regardless which data it consumes, right? It either consumes a scalar value, or in this case, it consumes an array, right? And again produces a series, right? And of course, we can convert such a series to a scalar value as well if we simply aggregate the array, right? I think, yeah, let's move on. Sharing the slides, sorry. There we go. So the next one I will show, and I hope to be quicker so that we have enough time to answer your questions, is a question surrounding combining multiple, what is here called fetches. So basically how to combine more or less independent tables with each other, right? In this case, two custom entities are mentioned, and I will simply share it by going a bit of a different route. So I prepared a query that returns logs for a specific Kubernetes node, right? And I just added here this type equals log so that we can easier identify the log records after the append command. And I'll switch to the table visualization so that we can see it even easier. And here in this case, the goal is not to join those two tables, but the customer here wanted to really achieve a combined result set, which is basically a union of both tables. And in this case, I combined the logs from a specific Kubernetes node with Davis events for the same Kubernetes node, right? And here just added this flag to identify the event records. And if we run this query and sort the data by timestamp, then we can see how the events are mixing into the data stream, right? So we see a couple of events, then we see a couple of logs, and again, we might see a couple of events later on. So if we filter on this entire data set then, right, then we would match against the combined data stream, which is in this case provided by assigning the name message to the content field of the logs and the name message to the event names, right? So if we now do a filter command contains against the message field, and we, I don't know, we search for less, then we get the combined result, right? We match against the events as well as the logs. Okay. Then let's continue. Another one. So this will be a quick one because the question was surrounding our parse command or log parsing capabilities. Here the customer tried to extract the user ID from an exemplary set of log lines, right? Well aware that this data set is in this case generated or explaining the problem or the use case. So I will also quickly share it here. So here I just took the couple of just copy pasted the log lines the user here tried to explain with our data command, right? You can simply create test data, a couple of test records to try DQL features. And here I simply want to quickly share our DPL architect, right? So we have a dedicated workflow which helps us to parse logs, right? And there we can, we also have auto-completion for the matches in DPL. And here we can simply, I don't know, see live what's going on, what is matching our in our log lines. and here we can simply now extract the user, again followed by a space, right? So in this case, the parser will be quite simple, and then there is another line data following, right? So let's add this to the query. In this case, we see that we extracted the user, and then of course we can summarize the number of log lines by the extracted user, and that's what the goal or the intended result should show based on the question in the forum.
One question regarding parsing, maybe. When you are in the parsing view or the architect view, you see only one record. So how can you add other records which are relevant? So my pattern might not match everything with what I see on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can quickly show how easy it is to add other records to the result.
Yeah. See. So there you can also add further records, right? Either by copy pasting or fetching them via DQL, right?
And can you maybe click here on the add preview button in the top right?
Sure.
And there you will see, so what kind of so if you click on the matched records and unmatched, so if there are any unmatched records, you can add them here to your to the preview. So no need of copy and pasting. So this is something also I just recently discovered how the preview works in the DPL architect.
Yeah. And let's see what happens if we would here add an IP address, right? There we see nothing matches, right? We didn't find an IP address, but if we would use an alnum matcher here, then we would again see what matches. And yeah, by the way, thanks for the leeway, Sini. Okay, continuing, because I think we are half past already, so we should have enough time. The last one I want to share is a really interesting one, in my opinion. So this, of course, extends to a more realistic production monitoring use case, because here the question was surrounding a possibility to show the resource consumption in relationship to the amount of available resources, right, on Kubernetes cluster level. So here the goal was to achieve a query that gives us the total amount of memory or CPU or a disk in relationship to the memory that is available on host level, right? And just to be fair, so this question was not asked on the forum yet. It was coming from an internal channel, but anyway, it's very interesting to share these insights, right? Again, I started by using the memory usage metric. Of course, this query I will show the complete example later, will of course extend to also using the disk usage metric, the CPU metric. In this case, we start off with the host, right? And now we want to get to the actual Kubernetes cluster, right? And the first thing I want to do here is joining the actually available memory for the host, right? And here I'm just using the join command, but of course the lookup command would work as well. And here just, joining the relationship to the Kubernetes cluster. So the host, of course, has a field called clustered by Kubernetes cluster, right? So it knows to which Kubernetes cluster it belongs, as well as the total memory, right? So if we take a look at the result set, we get here the information, okay, this log has about 16 gigs of memory. And here just prefixed the joined columns or fields with host to simply simplify readability of the result. Now what we miss is still the Kubernetes cluster name, right? So again, I'm here, I already have the information to which Kubernetes cluster the host belongs, right? So here you can see this host.cluster as a result from the relationship to the Kubernetes cluster from host. And then here just fetching again the Kubernetes cluster and joining on a bit more complicated join condition. So here we have the host cluster field on the left side of the join, and the right side has the ID field, right, of the Kubernetes cluster. And then prefixing the result field with cluster dot. If we wouldn't do it, we will get a prefix of write dot, right? So in order to ease the identification of the joined fields, right? If we would not choose a good default prefix, we would have field name collisions between the original table and the joined fields, and therefore we are setting a default prefix. So here now we finally have the Kubernetes cluster name. So let's see, this EKS, that's the Kubernetes cluster name. And now the interesting part, again, using or a leeway to the use case we saw at the beginning, we now have the total available memory on host level, and we can now relate the actual memory usage per host with the total available memory by, again, using a mathematical expression that simply calculates the actual memory usage on host level with the available total memory, right? So if you run the query, we get here, again, the resulting series, which is the percentage of actually used memory. So let's throw away the other series. So we can throw away the memory and we will only see we will only keep the Kubernetes cluster name. So we will only keep the cluster.entity name. The name. Sorry, that's the one we want to keep. We will move away the host. We will throw away, and we will throw away the host ID and the cluster ID. And then we should see a nice chart. So here, combination of the host ID and the Kubernetes cluster name showing us a percentage value over time, which is representing the actually used memory related to the available memory on host level, right? We can see here that a maximum of 45% of memory is used by a certain host.
Peter, I see you use here, and so you do the join on entities, and what's sometimes challenging to know what kind of relationships exist for entities and which one do I have to use. So is there a way maybe in auto-suggest to easily find the right relationship I have to use? So now exactly in your case, what you have, cluster ID, clustered by Kubernetes cluster. So how would I, as a non-experienced user, know that even I have to use the clustered by relationship?
Mm-hmm. Now let's try it here. So let's see whether a host has a relationship to a cluster, right? So here I simply type cluster, and then it immediately tells that the host is either clustered by, right, or has a relationship to a Kubernetes cluster, right? And then this is the right one. So here I can see that this host is related to this specific Kubernetes cluster, right? So the goal is that our auto-completion service is helping you finding the correct relationship, or if we simply want to find a relationship to a disk, we simply search for disk and then have the information that it contains a certain disk, right? And again, here we say disk ID, or let's call this ID equals disk ID. And then we can again, sorry for the bar here, we can again join the disk. Where of course the condition is that the left side, right? So the left side join field is the ID, and it matches the right side right side's ID. And that should work. Sure what I did wrong here, but nonetheless.
But anyway, so this means you don't have to leave the environment if you want any kind of relationship info. You can do everything in notebooks. It shows you a nice auto suggestion and all kind of relationships. So if you think your entity has a relationship to Kubernetes, you just use autocomplete and enter Kubernetes, and it will show you the proper relationship.
Exactly. Okay, let's open up to the questions, right, Cindy?
Yeah. Let's start with one. Yeah, there is a question related to time series. For now, it seems the time series only return a time range and intervals, which is fine by Dynatrace. But when querying this data via the API, I need the individual timestamps returned with the values. Is there a way to do this? If not, are there plans to add this feature? Because without it, it makes it extremely difficult to query metric data in third-party tools. Yeah. So in general, so we export in the result when you query any kind of time series data, you only see the start and the end timestamp and the interval. And here, please, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but in future, the DQL will have a generic functionality to generate series out of other series, which will all allow to also generate those timestamps. So in future, there are some enhancements planned with which you will be able to, just out of DQL, add also timestamp information to the result set of a time series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, currently I agree. So we would have to manually create this timestamp array, right? By choosing the start timestamp and adding an array of the same size as the series. And again, adding 1 minute to each of those array elements, which of course is cumbersome.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump to the next question. If you have a question, so can we get the difference of two different log lines? So process ID started at 3 and process ID ended at 3:15. So the difference in minutes. So maybe Peter, you can quickly mock two records with a content of, I don't know, PID with a unique identifier PID1 and PID2, so two log records, and with some timestamp 15 minutes, and so with two timestamps, and calculate the difference between them.
Yeah, again, just here illustrating the solution. So here we would have a start transaction, and let's say here we would have a start that happened 5 minutes ago and an end which happened 2 minutes ago. And of course, we can parse the log line to identify a process ID or a job ID, right? So let's see here what we had, and then we simply here there are multiple ways. So what we can do here is take min, or let me see. Do the following. Or I will simplify it. Start. Then let's take the timestamp or the TS value. And then take messages end, take the timestamp, and let's say here we call this start, and here we call this end, and then we can calculate the time difference. So fields add time difference equals absolute of end minus start. Okay. Let's start with the time information at the beginning. So here we see that those happen 3 minutes within each other, and what needs to be explained here is that in case there are more start events or more end events by the same job ID, then of course the take min, take max, first or last decide on the deduplication of the events, right? So we either can control whether we want to take the first scene start event, the first scene end event, or any of those in order to figure out what of those should be taken. We could even calculate the average, right, or the median of those timestamps. But here I'm simply taking the minimum, so the earliest scene timestamp of this start event.
Thanks, Peter. Let me jump to the next question. Does DQL support to filter only unique values?
So I hope I understand the question correctly. So I think it's about having a data set that contains duplicates, right? And we want to find unique values, right? So let's choose a Davis event. And I'm here taking the Davis problem. Let's see whether one of those is active on this environment. Maybe we need to extend the time frame a bit. So there we can see that, or this is just an example for a data set that has a lot of duplicates, because we get many updates or many update events for the same problem ID, right? So here, if we could now filter on specific problem ID, then we see that 6 records or 6 results were found whereas there is only one specific problem ID. And what we also, and this goes back to the previous example. So what we can do here is, again, use the summarize command to, let's sort by time first. And now take the first, so the newest problem, right? The newest problem ID. So here we deduplicated, right? We sorted the data over time and took the first value. However, of course, we might want to also see how many distinct problem IDs are there, right? We simply summarize by problem ID. Okay, then we see, we have 17 problem events for this distinct problem ID, right? And again, we can see that overall on this system, we have 12 distinct problems. And of course, you can further summarize, right? So summarize again. So now we have the count distinct of problems, right? And if we see over the last 7 days, we had 76 problems, right? And the deduplication here happens by the grouping. So the grouping key creates one distinct element for each value, right? And we can, of course, affected entities, let's see, what is the number of problems? So I can forget the timestamp sorting here, doesn't help. But here we can see how many entities in total were affected, right? And here the data set is not really suitable for this use case, but anyway.
Thanks, Peter. Maybe we have a more practical question with a practical data set, let's say. So someone is ingesting a CSV file into Dynatrace, and the CSV file contains of some timestamp info and of a value. And that person would like to chart it on a, put it on a chart. So maybe if you check out or actually I can send you the data set and we can try to do it together if you want.
Sure, let's do it that way.
So I've sent you the snippet, and maybe you can just paste it in the notebook.
Simply paste it in the Markdown section for reference. Oh, for that.
Yeah, you need to put it as code, but
put it as code.
So sorry, with free backticks, then it will be formatted as code. So in Markdown, or like that. Both things work.
Good. So basically what we would do here is, and I will take now this data set, right? So we could parse this, right, using the key value pair parser, and then chart this number over time, right? So again, record message equals that way. We can now see the data set. And now let's use the parse command. This is message, and then we need to use the key value pair. And I need to look into the documentation.
I think it's easier to use an array, and then within the array you can use key value but it's easier if you go via DPL architect, then you see already.
Yeah, let's do it that way. Array, and then
curly brackets.
curly braces. Then we here could put the key value pair. And then we need to.
Maybe it's easier if you do,
yeah.
if you do double quoted string, so DQS.
That's correct, yeah.
DQS timestamp. And then you have a comma, and then you have a double
number,
yeah. And then you have as an optional end of line.
What did you say?
Optional end of line. So
well,
UL with a question mark. But with first the UL, then the question mark.
Yeah, of course.
And the after DQS you need a colon.
Of course.
And you put everything again in parentheses, except the UL. And then you colon I. So to extract it, sorry, Peter, I will just mark it for you. Here you need to set an index, so column I, this is what we're extracting, so this is what we extract from each. Yeah, and then close curly brackets, and then extract the array, so colon array, or whatever variable you're using. And yeah, what we forgot, we need a quantifier. The quantifier is actually here. So it's again curly brackets, 1 comma. Almost, because punctuation, as you see.
Yeah, of course. But here we should, yeah. Let's simply convert this to a dot for now. So in the data, let's put it that way, because otherwise we will lose.
Yeah, you will lose a lot of time. You could use string replace and.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but just to get an idea how you would do this. Yeah.
But then let's quickly check what we did here. And this should be a star, right?
No star needed. It means just at least one occurrence and then optional.
Yeah.
But sorry, I know what kind of mistake I made. It's you have deleted the UL.
Where was it? It was
behind the index, yeah.
Behind the index UL.
Optional, right?
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, now it looks good.
Yeah, exactly. Now we are there. So then we have to expand the array. Yes. And again, array. Here we can see the number. Then let's do a make time series average r number. Of course, the timestamp field is not it didn't find the timestamp field, so we simply use the
r dot
timestamp. Where is it? R dot.
But it's a string, so we need to convert it to
timestamp equals to timestamp of r timestamp. Why doesn't it timestamp? We go, and then this should work.
Parameter.
Okay. Timestamp. Okay.
Yeah. Most probably our format doesn't work as expected.
But the summarize should work. Summarize average r.num. Yeah, there we go. So only thing missing is that we need to fine tune to have the make time series digest.
Yeah, but that's the idea how you would do this.
Yeah.
Let me look at other questions we got in the meantime. This is done. Is it possible to declare a variable and use it in all the blocks?
Not yet. So it is planned to be added to DQL, but currently we cannot do that with one exception. So with one UI-based approach, where you can use dashboard variables to be used for the DQLs that you use on the dashboard. So just to quickly demo such a dashboard variable in case you haven't seen it. So there we go. We add a variable. We choose simple CSV. The variable, let's call it ID, and use a value of test. And then we add a DQL query and data record A equals test. And then we use a filter A equals $ID. So here this should match more or less. So I'm not sure. But here you can see that the dashboard variables you can add should work on the dashboard level. Going back to notebooks.
Thanks. I see we have two questions regarding alerting and DQL. So maybe I'll try to summarize them. So is it possible, based on data in Grail, based on data which is being ingested into Grail right now, to trigger any kind of alerts?
Yes, of course it is. So first of all, that already during ingest, an event can be created, right, or raised. So basically, if a certain event is detected on ingest, we can raise an event, use this event within the workflow, within automations, and trigger then a follow-up action, as well as our alerting will also be extended over time in the future.
Thanks. We have a question regarding the join command. When will be documentation updated about the join command?
I think it should go live as we speak. So we do our best to keep the documentation in sync with deployment. But of course, we might have a couple of hours where the documentation is a bit out of sync with the product, but usually this shouldn't happen.
thanks. Just going through the questions, trying to understand if I understand all of them. There's an obvious question regarding the lookup command. So with lookup command, we sometimes end up with limited results due to too many relationships. Does this new join command solve the issue?
Yeah, so very good question. So first of all, I have to explain two differences. The queries that are the DQL queries that are fetching entity data, they are actually going to the existing Dynatrace backend, not Grail, which means that we have certain limitations with that API, right? So the serialized amount of data needs to stay within certain bounds. The table size limit is relatively large, right? So for the join, as well as the lookup command, as well as the in keyword subquery, we can match up to 128 megabytes from the right side based on data in Grail. But due to the fact that we are working on, but not yet ready to have Smartscape data in Grail, there are stricter limits. Those are basically driven by the existing Dynatrace backend and not the Grail backend, right? So that's why the number of relationships is limited in a more strict way compared to if we use the join command or the lookup command for Grail-based data, such as relating events to each other, logs to each other. There we can relate much more data.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think maybe one last question, since we're already over time. Is there a way to query process bytes written for a host split per disk? I have a query for process bytes written, but I cannot figure out if it's possible to split per disk. So do we have this metric available, bytes written per disk?
Disk bytes written?
Written per disk, yes, we have it. Split per host disk.
What do we want to split by host? Or the host and disk?
Host and disk.
Is that one? Let's also use the host name and the disk. Oh, whatever disk. Okay, we only have the disk ID. Nonetheless, again, adding the disk name via lookup, right? Disk. Then the source field is disk. Could also join on host, by the way, and the lookup field is ID. Then we should get again the disk name. There we go. So the partition name.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. I would say we can wrap up the session.
Exactly. So let's wrap up. The only thing I wanted to share is again the promotion of our Discover environment. As I said, we are updating the documentation, trying to create more and better examples that are usable in a real environment. And we will use the Discover environment as a reference. Then, of course, we are actively looking at your questions in the community. So sorry for not being able to address all of them in this call. But of course, we do our best to answer your questions in the community. And again, I want to end with the leeway to perform. So we will have again a booth dedicated for Grail. I will be there alongside other product management members. Of course, also doing specific questions for DQL, going into more depth about log analytics topics, as well as taking a look at DQL in a broader context, not only logs. So again, trying to show presence. And then we already have the next session planned in January, right? So the next session in our round here. And again, thanks a lot for the time you spent today, for the interest and your questions. And happy to see you next year. And in case we don't see each other either in a call or the forum or other places, I wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and happy to see you again.
Enjoy the holidays, guys.